Hello everyone, this is R.S. Miller at the endtimenews.org and today is September 8th, 2013. This is your Fast Track Report. The U.S. is planning a 3-day strike on Syria. The U.S. military is planning a more extensive military operation against regime targets in Syria than had been previously planned, according to a report by the Los Angeles Times. Unnamed U.S. officials told the paper that the Pentagon is drawing up plans for 3 days of strikes against a list of targets significantly longer than the original list of 50, though it is still expected to be more a show of force than an attempt to influence events on the battlefield. According to the report, the U.S. military could utilize Air Force bombers in addition to the 5 U.S. missile destroyers currently patrolling the eastern Mediterranean Sea. The plan would include 2 waves of strikes, an initial barrage against the extended list of targets, to be followed by a secondary one, which would aim to strike missed targets or those which hadn't been destroyed by the first. The attack would involve the use of cruise missiles and air-to-surface missiles which would be launched from outside the range of the Syrian air defenses. The USS Nimitz aircraft carrier strike group, which includes cruiser USS Princeton and the destroyers USS William P. Lawrence, USS Stockdale, and USS Shoup, could be included in the operation. With a U.S. strike looming over Syria, Russian aircraft evacuate citizens from Syria and protesters across the world hold rallies against military action. A Russian emergencies ministry plane has arrived in the Syrian port city of Latakia to pick up Russians and CIS citizens waiting to leave the country in anticipation of the U.S. strike. A team of rescuers and psychologists are also on board to assist the passengers during the flight, according to the emergency ministry spokesperson. All the people who desire to leave are already in Latakia airport, with their numbers being currently determined. Meanwhile, protests were held across the globe on Saturday to speak out against the U.S.-led strike on Syria, as world leaders asked Washington to wait for the results of a UN report before taking military action. Around 200 people gathered outside the White House on Saturday to vote their opposition against a military strike on Syria and demand that Congress votes no on the issue. Demonstrators chanted, "They say more war, we say no," and carried signs stating that war on Syria would be built on a lie. There is a grassroots uprising against the Democrats and the Republicans. Founder of the anti-war group Code Pink, Medea Benjamin told AP. "We do not want another war," she said, pointing to a broad anti-war feeling in the U.S. Activists also hit the streets of New York carrying signs which read, "No more wars for corporate profit," and "Cut the Pentagon, not food stamps." Another 150 people gathered in Indianapolis. Other protests were reported across Louisiana and Michigan. In Canada, a rally was held across the street from the U.S. consulate in Toronto. People gathered to demonstrate against Washington's recent efforts to garner support for a military strike. The organizer of the protests, Sid Lakambi, said that people should not believe U.S. claims that Assad's government launched the August 21st chemical attack in the Damascus suburb. "We are not going to support the United States government as it launches yet another incredibly brutal, immoral, and illegal war based on lies," Lakambi told the Canadian press. Demonstrations were also held in front of the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa, Canada. 300 people rallied outside the U.S. Embassy in the Lebanese capital of Beirut, where protests entered their second day. Activists also gathered in the Philippines and Pakistan to voice their opposition to a U.S.-led strike on Syria. Pope Francis held a 5-hour prayer vigil in the Vatican for peace in Syria, asking world leaders to remove their nations from a spiral of sorrow and death. He stressed that violence and war lead only to death. Although nobody wants to go to war, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry echoes some of President Obama's reasons why it is necessary to do so.
It is about whether Iran, which itself has been a victim of chemical weapons attacks, will now feel emboldened in the absence of action to obtain nuclear weapons. It is about Hezbollah and North Korea and every other terrorist group or dictator that might ever again contemplate the use of weapons of mass destruction. Will they remember that the Assad regime was stopped from those weapons' current or future use? Or will they remember that the world stood aside and created impunity?
Even if Congress doesn't approve a resolution for a limited strike on Syria, President Obama may go ahead with the military operation anyway. Earlier during a press briefing, he stated that yet while I believe I have the authority to carry out a military action without specific congressional authorization, I know that the country will be stronger if we take this course.
I'm confident in the case our government has made without waiting for UN inspectors. I'm comfortable going forward without the approval of a United Nations Security Council that so far has been completely paralyzed and unwilling to hold Assad accountable. As a consequence, many people have advised against taking this decision to Congress. And undoubtedly they were impacted by what we saw happen in the United Kingdom this week when the parliament of our closest ally failed to pass a resolution with a similar goal, even as the Prime Minister supported taking action. Yet while I believe I have the authority to carry out this military action without specific congressional authorization, I know that the country will be stronger if we take this course, and our actions will be even more effective.
Friends, the crisis in Syria, and indeed the Middle East, is truly a case of damned if you do and damned if you don't. If the U.S. strikes Syria, the ensuing firestorm could engulf the Middle East region and the entire world. But on the other hand, if Assad is allowed to use such weapons of mass destruction with impunity, then it paves the way for other fanatical regimes such as North Korea and Iran to do the same. Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, has recently threatened to launch nuclear missiles on various cities within the continental U.S. and continues to work on a means to deliver those alleged nuclear warheads. Meanwhile, Iran's apocalyptically inspired supreme leadership, the Ayatollah Khomeini, and his subordinates continue the mad rush to build nuclear weapons for the main purpose of wiping Israel off the face of the earth. The ideology behind their madness is an unnatural hatred for the people of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In Psalm 83, there's a description of this never-ending pursuit, and the leaders of the world today would do well to hear and understand it. Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. The Bible even goes on to tell who those people are, which seek Israel's total destruction. For they have consulted together with one consent. They have formed a confederacy against you. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, Jabal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria has also joined them. As the situation in the Middle East reaches the boiling point, it becomes more apparent that the news headlines of today are lining up with last days Bible prophecy, written over 2,000 years ago. Whether or not the United States strikes Syria may not matter in the end. The hatred of the Jews coming from the Arab nation as a whole, the determination to remove the nation of Israel from what's perceived as Arab lands, And let's not forget that Israel has its own red line when it comes to both Iran and Syria. By the way, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated last year that Iran will have reached the nuclear threshold at around August or September or so of this year. In my opinion, I think that a military strike on Syria is in fact a last-ditch effort to avert a third world war, even though it may actually be the ignition source. However, if there is no strike on Syria, then look forward to an Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear facilities at some point in the very near future. We are living in the last days, and what's most important is, where will you spend all of eternity? Life as we know it is but the blink of a gnat's eyelid, and eternity is forever. Are you saved? There is a really simple prayer that will lead you to salvation through Jesus Christ. Pray the prayer with all sincerity, and you will be saved. May God bless you.